In this video, we are building on the concepts we learned in the series How to Machine Knit the Everything Sweater. Like the Everything Sweater, the vest can be knit with any yarn using any machine, and it fits most everyone. The vest takes full advantage of the armhole for ease and comfort, while it eliminates the bulk of the collar at the back of the neck. It still gives you multiple choices for the lapel and additional options to wear it upside down. The companion pattern includes 4 variations for narrowing the collar and lapel, a very easy no-roll edging for both the outside of the vest and the armholes, and a newly designed cap sleeve to make the vest ever so comfy. The link for the pattern is in the description below. In this video, you will learn the basics for modifying the collar and lapel. For our sample, we are showing the skinniest lapel of them all. So let's start. My magic number is 52. Watch How to Machine Knit the Everything Sweater Part 1, the overview, to determine how to calculate your magic number for your yarn and machine. I've just cast on my 52 stitches with scrap yarn and knit a few rows. Now I'm changing to my main yarn and will knit 52 rows. I'll see you then. Okay, so now we have just finished our back, and my magic number is 52, which is 26 on both sides of 0. So I'm going to take the left side out of 0 because I'm going to do a narrow collar. So all I have is 26 stitches on my right side, and I'm going to take half of those out of work just so I can cast on with some scrap yarn. And so we have 26 stitches. Now, before we start knitting, I want to go back to my back where I have marked my center 2 stitches, and with the right side facing the machine, I am going to pick up the right half and hang it on that end stitch. I'm starting with the center stitch because I'm going to join it as I go. So I'm just placing that stitch right on that end needle, right there, and letting it hang. Now, my carriage is in knit, so I could bring this all the way out if I wanted to. So I pulled it out and it's going to knit across this row. I'm going to continue to hang the next stitch on that very end stitch and knit across again. The next one. A couple of things that I like to do is I like to put a weight right on that edge where I'm joining so that the seam does not get too tight. But in the meantime, I'm going to be doing something else right now. And I'm going to calculate really quickly how to put a dart into this. So I have 26 stitches, and I'm going to divide that into groups of 4. So 26 divided by 4 is 6 stitches, plus 2 extras. I'm going to put my carriage into hold in both directions. I'm going to take the stitches opposite the carriage into hold. This is along the armhole, or the back. This is along the back. It's always, all the action is going to happen on this side. This side is just the collar. This is the outer side of the sweater, the outside edge. Always the outside edge, always the inside edges. Okay, so 6 stitches are in a hold, and I'm going to knit 1 row. Now, I've knit 3 rows and hung 3 stitches, so this is my 4th row. So now I'm going to wrap this needle, but I'm going to show you an easy way, because if you go like this and come like this, you run the risk of getting your yarn tied up over here. But that's one way of wrapping, and that's a manual wrap, because I do not want holes where I'm going back and forth. I also am not hanging any more stitches right now because I'm not growing this side anymore for now. So, I'm going to knit that. Then I'm going to take the next group of 6 stitches out into hold, and I'm going to knit back. What I'm doing is I'm putting in extra little E's along the outside edge of the collar. Now, what I was showing you before, here's a little trick that I like to do, is I like to retract the needle just enough so the yarn falls below it. Boop! And then I bring it back out. That's an automatic wrap, but I don't run the risk of getting this yarn caught on my gate pegs or into my anything along here. I'm going to knit another row. Now, I had 2 sets of 6. Now I'm going to take 7 out. 2, 4, 6, 7, because I have 1 extra stitch. It doesn't matter if you put them over here or over here, but I like to do it this way. And I'm going to knit back one more time. Now I'm going to wrap that needle. Oh, I'm going to knit back. On the last group of stitches, I'm only going to bring in everything except the last stitch. That one I want to knit. Okay? So I'm going to knit back, and I'm going to wrap the stitch by right next to the last one in hold by pulling it back, retracting it. I hope you can see that. And then the yarn pops over and I bring it in to hold it back into hold. So then I'm going to knit back. Now, I only wanted a little bit of ease on this side. So at this point, because I've done my wrapping, I can bring all of these back into upper work position, or I could just change my carriage to knit, which I did. So these are all going to knit off on this next row. I now have, that's my 4th row. So I'm going to reset my counter to 4. Because that's the part that I'm counting, is how many of these I have left. And that is row 4. So onward, hang another stitch on the right hand needle and knit across. And I'm going to continue until all these are used up. And I'm just getting to my last stitch on this end. I'm going to expose that little stitch there and hang that on my needle. So now that's my 26th row, and my row counter says 25. So here's my 26. Now, that was pretty good. So now I have my 26 rows. And now I'm going to begin to work on my shaping. But I want to make one more pass so that my carriage is on the left. There's 2 things that we're going to be doing at this point. It doesn't really matter about the stitch counter or the row counter at this point, because we're going to shape, and we're going to shape in a couple different ways. We're going to take on the right 4 stitches into hold, groups of 4 stitches at a time. So I'm slipping them in the hold, making sure my carriage is in the hold position, and I am increasing 1 stitch on this side. And I'm going to do that by just taking my 3-pronged tool, moving the stitches over, putting them on. Now there's an empty needle here. I am going to pick up the bump on the stitch to the right of it. You can pick up the one from the left, but I prefer to do it from the right because I'd like to keep those edge stitches free and clear. And I'm going to knit 1 row. There we go. Now, if you don't want a hole over here, you can retract your needle. But actually, it kind of is attractive, so I'm going to leave it just as is. And then I'm going to knit back. every time my carriage gets onto the left, I'm going to increase one stitch over here. And I'm going to continue to do that until I have 26 needles, back to my magic number. On this side, I'm going to bring the next 4 stitches out into hold. And I'm going to knit back. Now, because we're rapidly short rowing, we want to make sure that last stitch knits off here, and we want to come right back. So I'm on the left side again. I'm going to transfer my stitches. Now, if you take your tool, transfer tool, and push back, you'll open those latches. That'll save you a little bit of time when you go to find to put your needle or put your transfer tool into place. And then I like to use the 3-1 because I want to then pick up 1. I just flip it around in my hand. There we go. Bring them back there. And did I bring one up yet? No. How do I know that? Because these are knit on the last row. If I had brought them into hold, they would be continuing along under the held stitches. That's how you can tell. Okay, I'm going to knit 2 rows. And I'm going to bring these up first and then do my increase. When you're working with the 4 stitch groups of stitches being brought into hold, okay, 2 more rows, 1, 2, okay, 4 into hold, and that leaves me 4 here. So at this stage, I am just going to continue to increase on this side, and let's see what I'm going to do. I'm going to do my increase, but when I hit that point of 4, okay, that's how many I want left. Now that's an increase. Now I have 5 stitches there. But this means I'm going to start returning stitches back into hold, or back into work, by moving 4 stitches into upper work position. You'll see how I keep going. So this side I'm going to continue to increase on. This side I'm going to be returning stitches. And you always return the stitches on the side of the same side of the held stitches as your carriages. So now I have an extra stitch there, and I'm going to knit that. So I'm going to bring my 4 back into work and continue to increase on this side. 4 into work, and these are the last 4, and an increase. Okay, so can you see how I have this beautiful little line of eyelets right on that little lapel? Now we're going to continue to increase over here, but let's finish our 2 rows. 1. Whenever you get to the side, you're going to do an increase, even though you're not going to do anything more on that side. So I'm doing my increase. And crisscrossing. Now, we're going to knit 1 more row to get over to this side. And I'm going to set my stitch counter back because I want to have, now that was 2 rows actually. Okay, 1, 2. So, I have 2 rows here. I want to go to 52 because that's my magic number. But every time I bring this over here, I need to make an increase up until I reach my magic number. So it's going to go on for a while. I'm only on stitch 15 now, and I have to go till 26. I've just did my increase and I'm knitting my last 2 rows before my last increase. Here's number 26. And I'm going to do that increase, but before I go any further, let me get that increase on there. So I'm finishing that increase, but I am also noting on what row did I do that increase. And I did that increase on row 25. And I'm going to make a note of that. Okay, so here's my row 26. Beautiful, it just happened to work out that way. Okay. But my row counter said 25. It could say 30, depending on how many stitches you're taking out and moving. So you want to make a note of that, because on the other side, you need to know what row to start decreases on. So now I'm going to knit the last 26 rows. All right, now we finished our side panel. So now we're going to do the lower front of the sweater. We need to move our carriage to the left again. Now, remember how we did the lapel where we took groups of 4 stitches out? Well, this time we are only going to take groups of 2 stitches out. We're taking 2 stitches out on the side away from the carriage and knitting 2 rows. Remember, this is the outside of the sweater. You could take 3 out, but I think you're still going to find that you don't have enough fabric in that area. We're out. Now I'm down to 8. And I like that because it makes a nice curve at the bottom. You can stop sooner and it won't be as pointy. But you do have to add more rows on this outside part so it's able to turn the corner. So I have 8 stitches. I've knit 2 rows now. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's still not enough. 9, 10, and I'm going to go 2 more. 11, 12. Now that's going to give you a big little opening there. But that's okay. You can always tighten that up if you'd like. Now we're going to start returning stitches in groups of 2 to upper work position, because I'm still in hold, and 2 rows. Okay, we just did our last part of that corner. We're going to hang the bottom edge of the back onto the lower part of the back panel so that we do not have to seam it. Now, I take the first loop right here, and you see that loop? And I pick that up, and actually this is a half loop here, but I'm going to pick this loop up and hang it on my end stitch. Okay? Now I still don't want this outside edge to get tight, so I'm going to put a weight on that. And as soon as I get a few rows here, I'm going to put a weight on this too. But now I'm going to knit the lower back and join the back at the same time. And so, now in this case, you can switch it to knit and then bring that all the way out if you'd like. It doesn't really matter, but I tend to leave it, once it's in hold, I usually leave it in hold. That was wrong. And what I did was I forgot to hang my next loop. I'm talking. Okay, so I just pulled it out, picked this one up, hang it, and then reknit that stitch manually. There we go. So that was row 2. Because you're adding 1 stitch every row. So I just hung my row 3. Row 4. And I'll meet you when we get all the way to the end. This is number 51, and I'm on row 50 right now. Here's my 51st stitch put on it, and I'm going to knit one row. Now here, if you look really carefully, you'll see there's a little knot-like thing on this side. And it's pretty tight, so I'm going to put that right on there, and I'm doing my 52nd row. If you can't get that little knot, don't worry about it, but when you take out your work, just be aware, when you take out the scrap yarn, just be aware there might be an open stitch right there where that little knot is. So I'm going to knit across. Now, we're just going to begin to do the same short rowing sequence that we did over here, where we have taking 2 out of every other row. And down here, we did 12 extra rows down to make that corner turn. See how that corner lays out? So we're just going to do this whole sequence one more time on the other lower half. So we need to move our carriage over to the left. So one more row. So we're going to put 2 in the hold, but make sure that if you switched your carriage back, you're still in hold on your carriage. 2 in the hold, knit 2 rows. Okay, I just finished that and I'm ending on my right hand side. When you begin the second side panel, reset the row counter to 0. Then calculate when to start the decreases. Take your magic number and subtract the row number on which you stop the increases on the first side panel. In this case, 52 minus 25 is 27. When we reach row 27, we're going to decrease on this side. Knit until row counter equals 27. So, all the action is going to happen on this side in this panel. And all I'm going to do is when I'm on the left, starting on row 27, I am going to decrease 1. I'm going to take it off on my 3, transfer tool, 3 eyelet transfer tool, and move it over 1 stitch. And that's a closed thing. If I had decreased and I wanted an eyelet, I would have to move this stitch over first, then move it over and have an open stitch. So it depends on how you decided you're going to do your decreases or your increases. That dictates how you do your decreases. Okay, on this side, we do nothing. We don't have to do anything over there. So we're going to knit 2 rows. And once again, I'm going to push back just a little to open those latches and move over a stitch. Make sure that end stitch is out of work. You start the second lapel with the carriage on the left. On the right, we shape the lapel by beginning to short row. If you recall, the short rows for the first lapel were made by taking groups of 4 stitches into hold at a time. We will do the same here. At the same time, the decreases will continue on the left until there are no needles left of 0. When we get down to 4 stitches in working position, we will begin returning the groups of 4 needles to working position as before. If we calculated correctly, the decreases and short rows will end at the same time. So I knit my last row, which brought all of my stitches into work, and I also finished my decreases on this side, which means I am about to start the back of the neck. For the collar, the real guide is how many open stitches remain on the top edge of the back section. I will knit as many rows as I have stitches, and there are 26. all the business is happening on the right-hand side right now. So I'm taking my transfer tool and I'm picking up that little knot at the end, because that's going to be my little first stitch. Let me see if I can pull it out a little bit. There we go. Can you see that? There's my first stitch. I'm going to hang it right there. Now notice, I made sure that I didn't twist my knitting, and I'm starting at this end and going this direction. So I'm going to do this and hang one stitch every row and knit one row. Hang the next stitch and knit one row, and I'm going to continue this until 3 stitches remain, not hung. I have just joined all but the last 3 stitches here, and what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to start short rowing again, but this time I'm going to do it in reverse. We're going to divide our numbers once again into quarters, so it's 6, 6, 7, 6, because 1 never gets knit. But this time I am going to pull all the stitches into hold position first, like so, except for that last stitch. Because this is out of work in hold, I'm not going to be hanging any stitches. So over here, I'm going to knit a row, and then I'm going to wrap the needle closest to the end held stitch. I'm going to retract it and let it pop forward. And then I'm going to knit back. So I have one wrapped stitch right there. Now I'm going to take the first 6 stitches and put them into upper work position. One row, wrap the end by retracting and letting it fall under, back. Then I'm going to take 7, because that's what I did the last time. I'm going to knit one row, and the last held stitch I'm going to retract and let it fall under. And come back out and one row. I'm going to put 6 into upper work, knit one row, and can you see I'm going to retract this one and let it wrap, and then knit. Now, so I've just placed my last 6 stitches into hold, and because this stitch is going to be knit on the next row, and I didn't hang a stitch on it yet, I'm going to hang the next stitch right on that needle. I'm going to knit it off. Then I'm going to conclude with the last 2 rows. One, and there's my last marked stitch right there, and that's going right on that last needle, and I'm going to knit it off. So right there we have gotten our last half collar made, and put another dart, but in reverse, a reversed shaped dart. But before I quit and before I cut my yarn, I'm going to measure off 4 widths of my stitches in the yarn, and that usually gives me enough to do the kitchenering of those stitches. So now I can cut this. With scrap yarn, knit a few rows and end off. This is what the vest looks like when it comes off the machine. To finish it, Kitchen the two halves of the collar together and then remove the waste yarn. The vest is done and can be worn right away. But if you want more ideas to enhance the edges, watch part 2 in this series. In that video, I will show you how to knit the self-finishing edging as you knit the vest. It controls the roll of the stockinette stitch on the outer edges and puts a no-roll edge on the armholes too. See you then! Please take a moment to subscribe and ring the bell for notifications of upcoming videos. Happy machine knitting!